And we are going to go live on Facebook as well.
Great.
The whole process.
I was about to say we're going to do it all, soup to nuts.
Beautiful. Okay. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you so much for coming and being with us today. We're letting a few more people get in before we officially dive into it. We are all set on Facebook now. Great. Okay. We are so glad to be hosting Harry Freedman with Leonard Cohen's The Mystical Roots of Genius and columnist Mark Hinson. We're so grateful for the turnout today, and thank you guys all for attending.
Absolutely.
Thank you. No, thank you for inviting us.
Before I introduce our guests any further, please note that we'll allow some time at the end for questions from the audience. You can submit a question at any time using the QA feature at the bottom of your screen, and we'll review it about 15 minutes before we close out for the day. If you'd like to purchase the book, you can order online at midtownreader.com, over the phone, or by stopping by our store in person. And we offer contactless pickup and delivery anywhere in Tallahassee for just $5. And we're also happy to ship worldwide. With that being said, it's my pleasure to introduce today's guest. So Harry Freedman is Britain's leading author of popular works of Jewish culture and history. He has written for The Guardian, Jewish Chronicle, Jewish Quarterly, Judaism Today, and contributed to the Encyclopedia of Modern Jewish Culture. Mark Hinson is a columnist for the local Gannett newspaper, the Tallahassee Democrat. He's been a professional journalist since 1983. And with that being said, I will now pass it over to you two.
Thank you.
All right. Good, good, good. It's nice to see you, Harry. I have not met you, but it's nice to see you.
Nice to meet you, Mark.
Through the computer. And so Harry's in London, I'm in Tallahassee, and this is part of the, besides Midtown Reader, part of the Word of South Festival. And they're having the reveal party on January 27th. The reveal party is in the new hotel at Cascades Park, and the festival will run from April 8th through 10th in Cascades Park with all sorts of people. I've gotten just a hint of who's coming. And so this is a preamble to that. And we couldn't be in better company than Harry Freedman and Leonard Cohen. Tell me about now the way I read the book. Here's the book right here. And I'm a huge Leonard Cohen fan, but you kind of got knocked sideways because you were driving down the road and you heard Hallelujah, one of Leonard Cohen's best known songs. Tell me about is that really the moment it hit? And when did you first hear that song?
Yeah, no, that was the moment it hit. I'd heard Hallelujah hundreds of times, like everybody else. And,
right.
I knew the tune. And like most songs, you don't really listen to the lyrics. Sometimes you do, you might sing them, but you don't necessarily listen to them. And something I heard him singing, I heard there was a secret chord that David played that pleased the Lord. And a sort of a light went off in my head. I thought, I know what he's singing about. He's singing about a legend in the Talmud, the Jewish book of law and ethics and wisdom, if you like. And it's a legend about how King David wakes up at night and plays his harp, and all the sages join him and all the angels come. So that's the secret chord he's playing. I just thought, that's a strange thing to put into a rock song. So I listened a bit more carefully, and I heard other legends coming out, and I heard biblical stories coming out, and I thought, there's something going on here. I really need to investigate this more, and that's really where the idea for the book came from.
I understand. One thing I liked about the book is the book goes songs. You picked several songs, and Hallelujah. I picked Hallelujah because most people know this song, and that wasn't a hit out of the box. It had to be. It was covered by John Kell, and then so where was Leonard when he wrote that? And he did not. It took him a long time to write this song. So all his songs. Some of his songs would take him years to write. And when it first came out on his version on the album, they didn't produce the album in the States. They said that they said to him, "We know you're great, Leonard, but we don't know if you're any good." And the album didn't come out, and it didn't come out really until it came out in Europe and in Canada. And it wasn't really until cover versions came that people started to pay attention to it. And eventually, I think about 10 or 13 years after he first wrote
Hallelujah, his version got into the charts, and there were 3 versions of the charts at the same time. But when he first wrote it, it just flopped. It was, people didn't know anything about it.
It was, and so did the album. The album was. I don't think it was even released in America. It wasn't
released in America. That's right. It wasn't released in America. It was eventually, but not when he recorded it. And it's astonishing, really, isn't it? Because, I mean, the thing about Leonard Cohen, I think, is certainly in his early music, it was quite dark and quite sort of miserable and negative. And I think that people didn't really go for it in the same way. He changed as he got older and matured. He changed, and his music brightened up. And what he was singing about became more. He started off as a love poet, if you like. I mean, he's a poet. That's the thing about Cohen. He's not. Unlike Bruce Springsteen, for example, he's not a man who's getting music and putting it to words. He's a guy who's writing words and putting it to music. So it's a different way of doing it. But I think people began to realize more and more as he got older what he was singing about and what he was. And then, there's this whole story at the end when he gets his money stolen.
Right, exactly. Tell people about that. That really hurt. Right after he got to he went to the monastery. Pick up there.
Yeah. Okay. So he spends a lot of time in the Buddhist monastery in Mount Baldy in California. And over the years, he goes there more and more often just to chill out and to be with his teacher, Roshi. And eventually he decides to move in. He's had enough of being on the road, had enough of being a superstar. He just decides to move into the monastery. And he moves in, and eventually he becomes ordained as a Buddhist monk. But while he's in the monastery, unknown to him, his manager allegedly is taking all his money. There's another side to that story as well, but I'm not very convinced about that side of the story. His manager taking all his money, and he's still in the monastery, and his daughter is working in a shop. I think it's a bookshop actually, and a friend of hers comes in and says, "Tell your dad to take a look at his bank accounts." Because he had nothing to do with his money. He's like many people. He had, just wasn't interested. He had people managing it for him, and that was okay. Right. And he looks at his bank account; it had been cleaned out. So, So that set off a whole train of lawsuits and all sorts of stuff. But the bottom line was that he was broke. He had no money. He was in his 70s. And what was he going to do? I suppose he could have stayed in the monastery and just lived the rest of his life out there, but that's not who he was. So he came out and he went back on the road, and he recorded 3 more albums over a period of 7 or 8 years. And that was really the period when his career took off.
Right.
Partly because his music was very different then, partly because I think people saw, this is an astonishing thing to do. But that's when his career took off. He toured the world several times at that point. And regained all his money. So it's quite astonishing.
Yeah. Did you ever get to see him live? I
saw him live during that period. I saw him live in London during that period. And he was so. One of the things that struck audiences, I think, was his humility. He talked to the audience. There are other rock stars who turn their back on the audience and don't say a word to them. He talked to the audience the whole way through. He's down on his knees. He's introducing his backing singers and his band, and you really felt you were in the company of somebody who wanted to be there and wanted you to be with him.
Right. Yeah. I saw him on that tour, the same tour that you saw. Right. And he said he had a real droll sense of humor. And he said, last time I was here, I was 70 years old, a kid with a dream. I was like, it's so interesting that he was funny. He was so funny.
Well, absolutely. And so, I'm writing the book about his spiritual sources, if you like, but all the way through it's peppered with humor. He was a humorous guy. Yeah. And however serious and however sort of deep he was, he also saw the funny side of things.
While I'm thinking about it, one of his humor, going about his humor, is tell the September story, because he said he's going to change his. Why did you change the name? You tell that story. That story.
So he's his name is Cohen, which is obviously a very Jewish name. Yeah. And he's being interviewed in England, I think. Maybe Canada, I'm not sure. He's being interviewed, and we're talking about around about the 1960s or 70s. And the interviewer says, Mr. Cohen, you ever thought about changing your name? And he says, yes. He says, yes. She says, what to? He said, September. She said, Leonard September. What a great idea. He said, no, September Cohen.
Come on, you gotta like that. You gotta like that. So, one thing I was taken by in your book, like Hallelujah is a good example, is you don't back off of his sexuality either, because Hallelujah is really a song. There is lyrics about that are very explicit. You know,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you know, how did you reconcile that, or how did you deal with that?
Well, you know, Hallelujah exists in many different versions, and his recorded version is probably the mildest of all of them. But I think the way you reconcile that is through the line in one of the other versions. I remembered when I moved in you, and the holy dove was moving too. So he's bringing sex and religion together. Yeah, and that for Leonard Cohen, I think he has many religious influences. He doesn't see any divisions between religions. He said there was never a religion he met which he didn't love. But I think one of the strongest influences was the Jewish mystical tradition Kabbalah. Yes. And in Kabbalah, sex is a holy act. Sex is the union of a man and a woman, or the union of two people, and it corresponds on the higher level to the union of the God, the part of God which we can relate to here with the part of God beyond. It's called the Unia Mystica, the mystical union, and sex is a metaphor for the mystical union. So, you know, he has no problem with that at all. And you look at the Song of Songs, which is a really graphic, erotic poem in the Bible, and you think, well, what's this doing here? It's there because it's sex is holy. Sex is holy, and that's and he saw that. Yeah.
So it's funny. I always hear Hallelujah because it became an anthem after 9/11, and especially in America. Even though he's Canadian, you know, go figure. Yeah. But they stand and sing this song, and I'm like, it's not it's about sex. It's not. It's about religion and sex. It's like
it's actually not about either of those. It's about words. It's about the power of words. And all I can do is just stand before the Lord of Song with Hallelujah on my tongue. It's about, because the words in Christianity and in Judaism are holy. In the Old Testament, God creates the world through speech, so words are used to create the world. And in the New Testament, John says, "In the beginning was the Word." So words are holy. And what he's saying really, I think, is we can use words for holy things or for profane things. We can abuse people, we can use words very nastily, or we can use words in a very positive sense. And so I think that's what the song is about.
Yeah, yes, it's a great song. Let's be honest about that. Another song that he was very proud of was Anthem, from the album The Future, and it has the couplet that he liked the most. There's a crack in everything, that's how the light gets through. Yeah, that sounds very Zen. But in your book, you say he's drawing on a lot of religions, especially in Anthem, in that song. So talk a little bit about Anthem.
Okay, so I mean, yes, it is Zen, but I think the main influence there is, again, the Kabbalah. It's about the Kabbalistic legend about the catastrophe at creation, which explains why the world is such a dark and difficult place to live in, rather than being this perfect creation. At creation, there's, according to this legend, the divine energy is being poured into vessels, which will then sort of spiral down to earth and infuse the earth with divine energy. But the vessels break, and the energy falls to earth, and the shells of the vessels land on top of it, and the energy is trapped. So our job is to remove the shells to allow divine energy to ascend again. But we're helped in that because there is a crack in everything, and that's how the light gets in. Right. But yeah, I think you could probably interpret that in the Zen way as well. And I think that's one of the really interesting things about Leonard Cohen is there's no simple way of interpreting. There are many ways of interpreting what he says. And he would say he doesn't want his music to be interpreted. He says anybody wants to interpret it, that's fine, but that's not what I'm doing.
Yeah. I should add that you have written a whole book on the Kabbalah. You have written about the Talmud. So this is not new material for you. You've written about a rabbi who was radical for his era. You have written the next book I'm going to read by you is entitled "The Murderous History of Bible Translations."
Yeah.
So how they get it wrong. So this is not your the first time at this.
It's not my first time at this, but it's the first time I've written about how it's been applied. The other books are about the history of these things, the Talmud of the Kabbalah, where they come from, how they evolved. This is a book about somebody who's very spiritual, takes messages, if you like, takes lessons from these various sources and from Christianity as well, and applies them to his thinking and his life, his approach to life. Yeah.
Well, on that same line of thought, when you had to send the book out, did you send it to the music press or to the religious press, or what? You're straddling a fence right here between the two.
Absolutely.
There's not many people that you can say this about. So it's like, well, how did you decide to write it, and how did you decide to send it?
Okay, so I decided to write it, as I said, because of it's just realizing that Hallelujah's got much more in it than just the words. And I then just started to go through his music, and I identified some of the sources that I thought he was using, and then drilled a bit more deeply and did some research, and basically came out with, I'm not sure, about 20 songs or something, where there's clearly some sort of religious legend or religious idea behind them. And then how it got put out, I mean, that's down to the publishers, but we got a lot of reviews in the religious press, and we got a lot of reviews in the national press as well. So I think Leonard Cohen is a figure that everybody knows about Leonard Cohen. So he's going to get reviews in the mainstream press, but equally it's religious. Yeah.
Yes, I was blown away. I want to thank you for sending me back to my CD pile of Leonard Cohen records. So I have been listening to it all, for a week straight.
Right.
But I was kind of blown away by your. You Wanted Darker. This is the end of his career. His last album. His last album was titled "You Wanted Darker," and you pointed out there's not a question mark behind "You Wanted Darker." Question mark.
There's no question mark there at all. Yeah.
Talk about that song a little bit. It turned me around on that song. I mean, I've always liked the song, but it really.
It is the most astonishing song, and this is my interpretation of it. He knows he's going to die. He's in his 80s. He's got cancer. He's frail. He knows he's getting towards the end. The whole way through his career, he's kept up a dialogue with God. He's in all his songs. There's a dialogue. He's a believer, but he's not a fan. He's not a fan.
Take that.
Exactly. He challenges God all the way through. He blames God for the Holocaust. He blames God for the crucifixion. If God had left everything alone, everything would be all right. So he's not a great fan of God, but he believes he's there. But he's now dying, and he knows he's dying, and he has to make his peace with God. And so he sings this remarkable song where, I mean, apart from anything else, the backing group, the backing singers are the choir from the synagogue he grew up in Montreal.
Oh, wow.
And the backing singer himself is the cantor from that synagogue. So he's gone all the way back to his roots, and he's singing this song. Is he blaming God, or is he making a statement? You want it darker. In other words, do you want it darker? Has it gone far enough? Is there going to be more, or you just want all the way through? You want it darker. And the chorus in this song, "Magnify, glorify, be thy holy name," is the first line of the Kaddish, which is the Jewish prayer over when somebody dies. You say the Kaddish. That's the first line of that. And the second line is "Vilified, crucified in thy holy name," which is the crucifixion. Mm-hmm. And the third line is "a million candles burning for the hope which never came," and that's the Holocaust, which is another of his big themes, because that's what blames God for that. So he's got those three themes, and then he uses this word hineni, and hineni is a Hebrew word. It means "here I am," and it doesn't occur very often in the Bible. When it does occur, it's at moments of great drama. So when Abraham's told to sacrifice his son God calls Abraham, and Abraham says, "Hineni, here I am." When Moses is told at the burning bush to go and liberate the Israelites, which he doesn't want to do, God calls him and he says, "Hineni, here I am." So he's handing himself over to God, if you like. And it's just, it's just such a powerful song. Just the insight that your death is coming and you need to do something publicly to, I don't know, make amends, to reconcile in some way. I think it's quite astonishing.
Yeah, deal me out of the game. If you're the dealer, deal me out.
Exactly. I've had enough of this. If you're dealing the cars, then I'm going. I don't want anymore.
I still like the Hinani. That it gave me new insight on that. So I've been focused on that song to the quote that the Hebrew quote, Hinani. So I was like, oh, so that's what he was talking about. I am. So
here I am. Yeah. I mean, and obviously he knows that most people listening to this song will not know what that means.
Yes, it's true. It's true.
But he nevertheless he's saying, because this is a personal song. It's not just, obviously it's a song on a record. And he wants presumably wants it to do well. Right. But it's a personal statement. So
from the end of his career to the start of his career, with the first song, I discovered it with Neil Diamond. Neil Diamond covered it. Suzanne. I'm talking about Suzanne, which is a 1967 song. It is the song that put him on the path of becoming a rock star. Before that, he was a poet and a novelist, and he's a writer. And so he lost all the the money from Suzanne. How did that happen?
I don't know how that happened. So he lost the rights. He lost the rights to it. And he said one day, "I'm glad I lost the rights, because who would want to make money out of a song like that?" But
I like the guy.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's probably his first really spiritual song,
right?
And he sings it at a time when he's becoming disillusioned with the Jewish tradition he's grown up in. Right. And he's taking an interest in Christianity, and the song is about a church in the old harbour at Montreal, and he and Suzanne, who's a woman he was clearly in love with but would never let him touch her, and that's the song. You touch your perfect body with your mind. You can touch. You have to think it. You can't do it. And he says, and this is a song which it's the harbour church where the sailors would pray before they set off on their journeys. Right. And it's got a statue of the Virgin Mary on the top, and it's got a wooden tower. All these things that he sings about in the song are all in there. But he turns basically a description of a church into a love song. Yeah, it's just, quite remarkable. Yeah.
That's other Canadian singers don't do that. No. So that's and plus you don't hear many Jewish people singing about Jesus. Because he sings about this walking on the water and the fishermen and all that.
I don't think he ever saw a division between Judaism and Christianity. Mm-hmm. And he says Christianity is the great missionary arm of Judaism. It comes later. It's a development. It didn't mean he was going to be a Christian. He was still tied to his roots, because there's an emotional connection there as well. But he didn't see any, and not just between Judaism and Christianity, but between any religions. He never saw a dividing line. They were all just a continuation of each other.
Wow, that is well. The only time he got really political, and this is a song that your book pointing me back to, was Samson in New Orleans. The 2014 song. I don't think many people know that song. Tell me the people listening a little bit about that song.
Okay, so Samson, we know, is the biblical hero who is captured by the Philistines, and he's taken into the Philistine temple. He's the strongest man in the world, but they cut his hair off and he loses his strength. And they take him into the temple, and he prays for his strength once more, and he gets his strength down and strength back, and he pulls down the pillars that are holding up the temple. That's a biblical story in a nutshell. What Cohen does with it, I think, is it's really difficult to understand exactly what he's saying. For me, anyway, it's difficult to understand. But he's talking about the floods in New Orleans. And he's talking about the destruction of New Orleans, and in a sense, he's comparing Samson's destruction of the temple with the destruction of New Orleans. Whether he's saying this is the fault of New Orleans for what they've done wrong. I don't think it is. Some people have said that. I think it's much more of an accusation against the politicians and against the managers of the city who have not looked after it, have not done what they needed to do to protect the city against floods. But he compares it to Samson pulling down the temple, because the temple, New Orleans for them is the temple, and it's indestructible. But it is a remarkable song, and it's one of very, very few protest songs that he writes. Compared to Bob Dylan, who obviously there are a lot of comparisons between Dylan and Cohen. But Dylan is known as a protest singer. Cohen has another protest song called "Story of Isaac," which he says is a song about how one generation is prepared to sacrifice their children for the sake of foolish ideas.
Right.
And that's but basically he's not a protest singer. He's more spiritual than that.
Well, I think Isaac was also written during the Vietnam War, so there was a lot of protests. It was a heated tongue. It was a heated tongue. So yes. Just this popped in my head. Have you ever read his Beautiful Loser, the experimental novel that he wrote?
Yeah, I can't, it's a long time ago and I can't remember it that well, but yes, I read it. Yeah.
Yeah, you got through it.
His music to me is much more powerful than his novels were written when it was a very early stage in his life.
Right.
His poetry is powerful too. I mean, I think that the Book of Mercy, which he describes as 50 psalms, not every poem is powerful in that, but some really are. But no, I mean, for me, he may be a poet, he may be a man who plays with words, but his great strength is the way he puts it to music. Right.
One of the people that I was introduced to is Saint Catherine in your book, the first Native American saint, who was very special to Leonard Cohen. Talk a little bit about her. Tell everybody listening about her.
So again, this is an illustration of how he sees Christianity and Judaism as the same thing. So St. Catherine was a woman who she was converted to Christianity when she was still living with her tribe. We're talking about the 19th century, and she was badly treated, and she had to leave. And she went to I can't remember where, but where she went to was close to Montreal, where Leonard Cohen would go many, many years later. And so he felt an affinity with her. He and his father would go to this place in Montreal where the Native Indians were dancing, and he felt an affinity with her. And she became, as you said, the first Native Indian saint. And she was canonized around about 1920, I think. And there's a statue of her on the front of St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York. And whenever Cohen was in New York, whenever he was passing, he would climb the steps to the statue and he would tie flowers to the statue. Oh, nice. And he just had this. There are various women in his life, powerful or at least independent spiritual women. Joan of Arc's another one. Yes. He writes a couple of songs about Joan of Arc. These are people he admires, A, because they're women and he's very affectionate towards women, and B, because they've achieved something long ago before women were supposed to achieve anything.
Right.
And I think that I think that his relationship with women like that is very interesting. Right.
So Tim, now he was a snappy dresser. This is changing the subject.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, he was much older, and he emerged. He came from a line of haberdashery. Talk. The story I've always heard is Rufus Wainwright, who was almost the son-in-law of Leonard Cohen, because he was a sperm donor for Lorca. And the first time Rufus met Leonard Cohen, Leonard came out in his bathrobe. It was early in the morning, and they talked about a bird, and they ate breakfast. And he said, "Well, isn't her father nice?" Said, and Rufus was a teenager at the time. And he said, "Well, he's so nice." And Leonard said, "Excuse me, I have to go back here and get dressed." He came out with an Armani suit, a tie, a fedora, as Rufus said, the full Leonard Cohen. And he said, and when I saw him, I couldn't speak. I said that it was too much. It was just too much. So he knew he had stage presence. He
has, and he was without doubt the best dressed rock star in the world. I mean, he really was. And I think that partly this is the age thing. You know, he arrives in Greenwich Village in the mid '60s when it's, you know, the hippie movement is taking off and it's all change and all, you know, really exciting there. But he's 10 years older than everybody else.
Yeah.
And, you know, somehow he has to get himself to fit in, and he struggles for a long time. He can't find an agent. He can't find somebody to produce his music. He struggles for a long time, but he gets there in the end. And I think one of the reasons he gets there is because he is so confident in who he is, even though he suffers from depression for most of his life. He's confident in who he is. And I think one of the ways that's just, I think, an interesting little story, you know, many Jewish people are a little bit embarrassed about their origins. They feel it's not, you know, people think I'm odd, they're a bit paranoid. So Bob Dylan, who's Jewish, comes from Duluth and arrives in Greenwich Village a little bit before Cohen. And he arrives with this backstory, which is not true at all, about
not in the least,
about how he's been this wanderer in the Midwest, and these things have happened to him. Yeah, and his real name is Robert Zimmerman, but in New York he's Bob Dylan. So he's, you know, he's thrown off his whole Jewish background, and he's just, you know, this strange guy who everybody should take an interest in because of what he's done. Leonard Cohen comes. And he's Leonard Cohen. Cohen is the most Jewish of all names. He doesn't give up the name. He keeps his name. This is who I am. And I think it was, you know, it probably made it difficult for him in the early days. That story we told earlier on about the interviewer saying Leonard September. But so it probably made him difficult in the early days. But I think eventually he becomes known as somebody who is just a little bit more mature than the very young scene in Greenwich Village, and I don't know, but dressing well is part of that.
Right. Yeah.
Well,
he came about it honest. His father was a haberdasher. It was, you know,
they had various businesses. They had a brass foundry as well. They were a very well connected and quite a prosperous family in Montreal. But yes, they made coats, I think. So, you know, he comes and when he's very young, he's still trying to get started. He works in their factory, so it's with him all the time.
Yeah.
I
didn't realize until your book that he came from a long line of rabbis. That's where Leonard Cohen. Talk a little bit about that. I
don't know how long the line is, because we can't really go much further back than the mid 19th century. But his mother's father was a rabbi in Lithuania, and he ran a rabbinic college there. And when he came to the States, he carried on working as a rabbi, and he wrote some quite deep Talmudic books. And on his father's side, his great grandfather was a rabbi also, but he gave up being, when he arrived in Canada, because they all came from Eastern Europe. When he arrived in Canada, he gave up being a rabbi and he went into business, and that's how the family started to get prosperous. But his brother, great grandfather's brother, remained a rabbi and became the chief rabbi of Canada. So he's got these influences. Yeah, he's got these influences on him. And you know, these influences are quite subtle. It doesn't mean that you're going to sit down and drum information into a child. It's just there. It's just all around you. And I think that's, you know, that was quite powerful for him.
Well, in Montreal, he is still, even in death, he's treated like a national figure.
Absolutely. In Montreal, there's a great. I haven't been to Montreal for many years, but there's a great big mural of him on one of the buildings. No, he is. You know, he's a son of Montreal, and he said about Montreal. This is again another illustration of his connection between Judaism and Christianity. Those of us who grew up in Montreal, the church never left us. and he's taken to, although he comes from, you know, a strongly Jewish family, he's taken to church by his nanny on a Sunday morning. He has an Irish Catholic nanny. She takes him to church. His father dies when he's very young, but his mother and his uncles take him to synagogue. So he's getting all these influences, and it's having a profound effect.
Right. Well, that's where it's like you go in any bookstore in Montreal and they have a Beautiful Loser. That's where I bought my copy of Beautiful Loser.
Is that right?
Yeah, I had to go to Canada to get the dang thing.
Yeah.
And I have a friend that lives in Burlington, and they go to Montreal every now and then to eat because it's a great town. And he said the house there, Leonard Cohen's house, is a shrine. It is.
Is
just
it? Is that right? That's interesting.
Flowers and read books outside and smoke cigarettes, of course. So he may be gone, but he is long not forgotten. So
absolutely, yeah, absolutely. I mean, and it's one of the things I argue in the book, that some of his music, like Hallelujah, for example, will carry on for a long time and may even become part of standard church and synagogue liturgy, because it's
right.
It's everybody's singing it, these days in churches. And Who by Fire as well, which is based on a Jewish song about what's going to happen in the next year. We get the new year, and you're singing about who's going to live, who's going to die, who's going to die by water, who's going to die by fire, who will be rich, who will be poor. But obviously that's the original song. He has his own version of that, and that's also being sung in synagogues.
Right. Tower of Song is one of my favorite Leonard Cohen songs.
Yeah.
That's based on Bible story too. Tower of Song, in a way, the Tower of Babel a little bit.
Yeah. I mean,
it's got Hank Williams in it.
I couldn't quite get into that one in terms of identifying his sources. It's all there. The Tower of Babel is there. The angels are there, but I couldn't quite. What I was trying to do in the book was to identify a legend or a Bible story or a Kabbalistic myth, and I couldn't find one that sort of tied the whole song together. Maybe I need to go back to it again.
Well, I was going to focus on that for a little bit. Did you have to listen? Did you listen to all of Leonard's songs? Every single one of them?
It's not difficult these days because it's all on the internet. It's all on the internet. You basically just sit down and you read his lyrics, and when something grabs you look into it more. I'm sure I missed a lot of stuff, but at the same time, I found a lot which I had no idea was there.
Right. Well, it's kind of refreshing not to read the same old story, the same old music book, the same, and he was, but the little facts that you do pick out that you put in the book, his early performing career was kind of spotty. To be honest, he'd walk off stage. He was
terrified. Yeah,
I mean, talk a little bit about that.
So this contradicts what I said earlier on about him being confident in who he was.
He got better.
He got better. He comes on stage and he can't tune his guitar, and he gets nervous and he can't sing, and he goes off. And just this is his first public gig, even though he's been doing poetry readings for years in Canada and in New York as well. His first public gig with a guitar, it's just too much for him.
Well, you mentioned the Isle of Wight concert. What happened at the Isle of Wight?
The Isle of Wight is a remarkable story, and I missed it. I was there the year before, and I missed this one. The Isle of Wight was a rock festival, like Woodstock, but smaller, and it was, you had to pay to get in, and this is about the second or third year the concert's been going on, and the audience are getting fed up with having to pay, and so they storm the fence. They break in. The place which is supposed to have 100,000 people has got 500,000 people in it. There are riots. Some of the bands won't go on. They set fire to the stage. It's a really, really chaotic process. We talked about 1972, I think. It was really chaotic. And it's Leonard Cohen's turn to go on. And I spoke to somebody who was there.
Wow.
And he said Leonard Cohen went on, and they're all booing and throwing things. And he says, "I can't see you. I can't see you." And this, when he was young, he learned a little bit about hypnotism. So this might be in there somewhere. He says, "I can't see you. Could you all light a match so that I can see you at all of your different heights?" And the crowd complied. They calmed down. They complied, and he sang for 2 hours, having calmed this, the seething crowd.
So he had magnetism even then. Yeah.
Well, yeah, but the other side of the story is he's playing in Hamburg, and it's
God, yeah.
yeah, and he's just heard about Kent State University and how 4 people have been killed.
Ooh.
And Vietnam is, it's a difficult time, and he's on Mandrax. He's bombed out, and he's just completely out of it. And he walks on stage in Hamburg, yeah, and he goes Sieg Heil.
Ooh.
And the audience erupts. They charge the stage, they boo him, and somebody apparently turns up with a gun, and eventually the audience is calmed down and they go and sit down, and then he starts singing a Yiddish song, which sets them off again.
If you didn't like that, you really won't like this.
Yeah, so there's 2 sides. There's ability to calm a crowd, and this ability to agitate a crowd.
Yeah, either one. He could go either way.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, what's your next? You've written a lot about Jewish religion and rabbis. Have you picked a next project, a next book?
No, I'm thinking about it at the moment. And I would like to do another book on someone like Leonard Cohen, but there are no other Leonard Cohens.
Oh yeah, they're kind of hard to come by.
Yeah. So I think I'm going to go back to history or something like that. But I'm struggling with it because writing about Leonard Cohen was such fun. I enjoyed it so much.
Yeah. That comes through. That comes through the book.
Yeah, I don't want the bubble to burst, if you like. But I've got to, if there's anybody out there who's got any ideas, please let me know.
Raise your hand.
Yeah.
Well, what was the best part about going back into Leonard Cohen so much? Because I'm sure you did a lot of listening to Leonard Cohen. So what part was the most fun?
I think the most fun really was just walking with my earphones in, listening to his music, and just spotting phrases, which I thought, yeah, that's something I can look at. I'm not an academic particularly. I did this from the point of view of I enjoy this man, I enjoy his music. I want to see what I can get out of it.
Right.
That I think was the most fun.
Yeah, I can see that. That's what comes through, because I looked at it and went, "Oh, I'm not, religion and music. This is going to be a trudge through." And I finished the book in no time. It's like it just reads like a dream. It's like, this is a good song. This is a good song. And I found myself singing and humming along, and then I would get to the album back out, and I would play it again. And so that's. Did you listen to a lot of Leonard Cohen while you were writing about Leonard Cohen?
Yeah, all the time. I tried to immerse myself as much as I could in it. It's not easy to listen to, for me anyway, to listen to lyrics and write at the same time, because the lyrics get in the way of what you're trying to write. You end up writing the lyrics rather than what you're trying to do. So
especially smart lyrics.
Especially smart lyrics. Yeah, exactly. So that wasn't easy, but I've listened to him the whole time. Fortunately, my wife loves Leonard Cohen, so it wasn't a problem.
That's my wife had to endure a week and a half of pure Leonard Cohen. So right. But she said, and she looked at me at dinner and said, "This is really good music." I said, "I know, I know." Thank goodness. So,
exactly.
So did any song jump out at you that you didn't write about, that you did not write?
I think the song that really moved me was The Window. The Window is a song, again, it's Kabbalistic, and there are windows in lots of his music. They keep recurring. And for Leonard Cohen, a window, for us, a window is a place where light gets in, and it's a boundary between inside and outside. For him, it's much more than that. It's a boundary between this world and what's beyond. Mm-hmm. And so he says, "Why do you stand by the window?" Can't remember exactly, but he was dressed up in pride. He's talking to a soul who is on the verge of passing through this liminal space, this window into the next world, but the soul is being held back because doesn't want to let go of what it's got, and he's persuading it, and he's using very Kabbalistic terms. He sings, "Let the I'm just going to get. I just want to look at it and just get it right. He says. He says. He says, "Why do you stand by the window, abandoned to beauty and pride?" So, in other words, you're still caught in the emotions of this world. "O chosen love, O frozen love, O tangle of matter and ghost." And that, to me, is such a powerful phrase. Tangle of matter and ghost is body and spirit. But right. the way he expresses it, it's just, you know, it's just poetry. And then he goes on to this very, very Kabbalistic, or it might even be Zen, or it's probably both actually. "Lay your rose on the fire give up to the sun give over to splendor in the arms of the high holy one." So he's just talking this soul upwards to, you know, to whatever is beyond, into an ascent. And he then goes into a little bit of religion, the Holy One, genius of a lesser, the word being made into flesh. So there he's talking about Jesus, but it's such a, I don't know, it's got so much in it, and you can read it in so many different ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's a poet. I mean, the guy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even when he writes about having a fling with Janis Joplin in Chelsea Hotel No. 2.
Yeah,
that's one of the greatest songs in the world. Yeah,
absolutely.
We have the music. Yeah, that's what Janis Joplin tells him. One tells him he's not good looking. I usually prefer handsome men. And then says that we may not be good looking, but we have the music. Yeah, it is. Yeah, I mean, come on, that's one of the best songs ever.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and you know, like many of his songs, you know, I've talked quite a lot about his spirituality. Like many of his songs, there's nothing spiritual in that at all. Really, it's just ideas and emotions. And,
right. And like I said, a fling. I'm trying to be nice. I'm trying to keep it clean. But I was also stunned to he was an artist. He painted, he drew.
Yeah,
he painted,
absolutely.
Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, if you look in his books, his books of poetry, it's full of illustrations, mainly self-portraits, just little line drawings, nothing very elaborate, just line drawings of himself. And apparently he would get up in the morning, there would always be a crayon and a piece of paper on his table. He'd get up in the morning and he'd start his day by doing a drawing. And sometimes he did more elaborate drawings. So during this period when he has to go back on the road because his money's been stolen.
Right.
One of the things he does is not just to play gigs, but to set up an art exhibition, and it travels around the world. And you know, I think it commands quite a bit of money. Leonard Cohen, I mean, a lot of rock stars do that actually, don't they? They turn into art and sell them. But
Tony Bennett, that kind of thing. Yeah. So yeah.
But you know, I think most of the world had no idea. Yes, they'd seen his line drawings, but they're line drawings. They're not, you know.
Right.
Yeah. They had no idea that he had this other side to him.
Right.
So words, music, pictures, and he's got them all really.
Yeah, and Philip Glass wrote a song cycle about his art. Yeah, I didn't know anything. I thought I knew a lot about Philip Glass, but I went, what? Yeah, so that was so I learned that from you. So thank you for that. So I'll see if that exists anywhere. So, you know, so anyway, again, the book is Leonard Cohen, The Mystical Roots of Genius, and he is one of the few geniuses out there that you can write a book about. Yeah. There's not many other people than that. So I think we have about 10 minutes left and 10 minutes for questions. I could sit here and talk to you all day, but
it's been really good fun, Mark. Thank you.
Yeah, it has been fun. Take it. Do we have any questions for Mr. Freedman?
Yes. You guys, if you would like to have any questions, start putting them into the chat, please. I did have one that came in. Barbara would like you guys to discuss the song Everybody Knows.
Everybody knows.
Yeah, I didn't really cover Everybody Knows. Let me just have a quick look and see if there's anything there that I can...
That's one of his sexual songs. If you want to.
Well, that's right. That's right.
It's about AIDS, I'll tell you that.
It's about what?
AIDS, the disease.
It is.
It is. It is.
I didn't know that. Let me go back and have another look at that.
That's part of what it's about.
Right.
I think that was not Tower of Song. Everybody Knows. I think that was on Various Possessions too. It was another song. I keep listening to that album and going, what were you guys not hearing that I'm hearing? Yeah, the album that was turned down. Yeah. It's
on I'm Your Man.
Okay, I'm Your Man. That one was not turned down.
and he's singing about how everything, and this is a very common theme for him, really. The world is not fair. The dice are loaded. Everybody roars with their fingers crossed. The boat is leaking. The captain lied. Everybody knows we live in an unjust world. But then he goes, everybody knows that you love me, baby. Everybody knows that you really do. So there's an optimism in that as well. I think this is part of the way that he's part of his approach. Really, is the world is dark, as in you want it darker, but there is an optimism, and it's not always there in his songs, but there is. Everybody knows the deal is rotten. Old Black Joe's still picking cotton. This is very negative. Everybody knows that the plague is coming. Everybody knows that it's moving fast. That's how it goes. Everybody knows. We all know the world is dark and in chaos. But it says, take one look at this sacred heart before it blows, and everybody knows. So there's the sacred heart. There is the possibility of rising from that darkness into a better world. Mm-hmm.
It's also, everybody knows that the naked woman and the naked man is a thing of the past.
Yes,
it sounds again, it sounds like I read into it as an AIDS metaphor. So. Yeah, because it came out right when the AIDS epidemic was killing people left and right. So.
Yeah.
So especially in America. So
I think all over the world.
All over the world. It was
Africa as well, particularly.
Africa is a totally, it was a heterosexual disease. So
absolutely, yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you for that. So the next question is, for someone looking in, someone who has never listened to Leonard Cohen's music at all, what would you suggest be the #1 song that they go to and listen to?
Well, I think that Hallelujah has to be a place to start. It's certainly, Hallelujah has been recorded more than, or almost more than, any other song. Right. So I think that's where you start. And I think that you maybe go back, try and do it a little bit chronologically. Although he spent years writing his songs. You might go back to his early songs, to Suzanne, to Marianne, So Long Marianne, and then probably come forward as a sort of flat piece in the middle of his career, and come forward almost to the 1990s and the 2000s. You Want It Darker clearly is probably the one to end with, but I think you just listen, really. I think you just listen, because I think one of the things about Leonard Cohen is that different songs will grab different people. Mm-hmm. And, some people will see nothing in a song at all, and other people think it's the best song in the world. So I would do that. Maybe you start with one of the Greatest Hits albums or something like that, so you can get a flavor of what he's doing. And then if you're still interested, drill down a little bit more into the albums in general.
I would say "Bird on a Wire" is a good song.
Bird on a Wire is good.
The Joe Cocker cover version, and Chelsea Hotel. You can't go wrong with that. Rufus Wainwright does a great version of that. Leonard does a great version.
Yeah,
so that's my 2 cents. That's my 2 cents. And then the live album, his last tour, because the double live album is a good compilation of Cohen hits. And he was great in concert. He was absolutely great. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, he was. Yeah, he really was. He was a performer who was humble, and that's quite remarkable.
That's hard to find too.
Yeah, it's hard to find. Yeah.
We have another question. Okay, so "Dance Me to the End of Love" captures my heart, especially since my husband of 43 years passed away. What does it mean to others?
Ooh. Harry, you take that one, man.
What does it mean to others? I think it's dancing is very important to Leonard Cohen. There's a lot of dancing in his life and in his music. And the end of love, I think he's just saying, we just keep going, and that love is the answer, if you like, and just dance with me to the end of love. Let's just keep dancing. I think that's what he's saying.
And it's great music too, which is, really it's a good, it sounds wonderful. So it's a lovely song.
I'll tell you one song which I can't get my head around is Democracy's Coming to USA.
Right.
Yeah. I really don't know what he's singing about there. First we take Manhattan, then we take Berlin. It doesn't, I don't know if you've got any insights into that.
Yeah. I've listened to it many times, and I went, well, if you say so.
Yeah, well, that as well. I mean, it's more about the first we take Manhattan, then we take Berlin. Who is this? Who's taking Manhattan and Berlin?
Right.
I don't know. Yeah.
That said, great music.
Absolutely. Brilliant music. Yeah, brilliant music.
Okay, so I typically like to close out on this question. So if you had to sell your book in just one sentence, what would that one sentence be?
Thank you.
I think it would be a book about how deep Leonard Cohen is and how learned he was and how much he knew about the world and its literature and its beliefs. Does that work?
Yes.
Yeah.
Works for me.
Okay. Mark or Harry, do you guys have anything you would like to say before we close out?
I'm just going to remind people that the Word of South, the main festival is April 8th through 10th in Cascades Park, and the reveal party for who's coming, and you will be surprised at some of the people that are coming. That's January 27th at the hotel in Cascades Park. So there you go, Word of South. And thanks to Midtown too.
I would just like to say thank you all for listening. It's so disappointing that I can't be there in person. It's a real shame that we have to do these things by Zoom. But thank you for taking the time to listen. It's been a real pleasure talking to you, Mark, as well. Thank you.
I loved your book. Thank you very much.
Thank you guys so much. And just as a reminder, if you would like to pick up a copy of the book, you can just give us a call, visit our store, or go online. Other than that, we are all set for today. And thank you guys so much. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.